My name is Sarah. I always thought that I live in a calm and safe area. Our town, Springfield, was known for its quiet atmosphere and friendly neighbors. But one day everything changed. It was an ordinary Friday night. I was returning home from work when I noticed a man following me. At first I didn't pay any attention to it, but when he turned behind me already on the 3rd Street, a feeling of anxiety began to overtake me. I quickened my pace, hoping he would turn somewhere else, but the man continued to follow me. I was already approaching my house when I dared to turn around. He was wearing a dark jacket with a hood covering most of his face. His eyes glistened in the light of the street lamps. "Did you lose something?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, although panic was tearing through me. He didn't answer, just smiled a cold, sinister smile that made me feel creepy. I resolutely returned to my house and quickly ran inside, slamming the door. Panting, I leaned against the door and tried to calm down. Who is he, and why did he pursue me? I looked into the eye, but he had already disappeared. At that moment, I thought it might just be a coincidence, but my heart couldn't calm down. This look, this smile, all this did not give me peace. The next day, I decided to stay at home. Working remotely, I could afford such a luxurious weekend, but thoughts about that man did not leave me. I tried to remember if I had seen him before, but the face remained unknown. My friend Jessica, who works for the local police, called me in the evening. "Sarah, how are you? I haven't heard from you in a while," she said with joy in her voice. "Hi, Jess. I'm fine. Just yesterday was a little weird," I replied and told her about the incident. "It's strange. We've had reports in town recently of a stranger stalking people. You should be careful," she advised. These words made me even more nervous. I thanked her for her advice and decided that I needed to be more careful. For the next few days, I only left the house during the day, trying to avoid evening walks, but it didn't help. A week later, I saw him again. He was standing on the opposite side of the street, staring at me. I felt a chill down my back. Now I knew for sure that this was not an accident. I became so scared that I decided to install surveillance cameras around the house. It gave me some sense of security. One of the cameras was pointed at the street where I last saw this stranger. One night I woke up to the sound of an alarm. My heart was pounding with adrenaline. I quickly ran to the monitor to see what happened, and then I saw him. He was standing right in front of the camera, looking straight at me through the lens. His smile was as sinister as when I first saw him. He tilted his head to the side, as if inviting me to some kind of game. I could not move from fear. I wanted to call the police, but my hands wouldn't obey me. He knew I saw him. He played with me. The next morning, I decided to share my concerns with Jessica. She came to me and we looked at the recordings from the cameras. "It doesn't look like an accident, Sarah. He's following you around on purpose," she said in a serious tone. We filed a police report, but they told me that they couldn't do anything without concrete evidence. They promised to patrol my area, but that didn't give me confidence. My days turned into absolute horror. I was afraid to leave the house. I was afraid to be alone. Every rustle, every sound seemed to me a signal of danger. A few days passed, and my fear gradually turned to anger. I decided that I would not let this stranger terrorize me. Jessica and I hatched a plan to catch him red-handed. "We'll set up extra cameras and traps around your house. I'll also be there if he shows up again," Jessica said, trying to reassure me. We got ready for the evening. Jessica was waiting in a car nearby, and I stayed at home watching the monitors. Time passed slowly, but around midnight I saw a shadow moving towards my house. My heart beat faster. It was him. I quickly informed Jessica, and she crept quietly into the house. The stranger approached one of the cameras, but this time he wasn't smiling. He looked focused and serious. I saw him bend down to take something out of his pocket. It was at this moment that Jessica ran out of cover and shouted, "Stop! Police!" He shuddered and started to run. Jessica ran after him, but he disappeared into the darkness, leaving me even more scared and confused. After that night, Jessica and I decided I needed to be even more careful. She told her superiors about the incident, and now the police are patrolling my neighborhood more often, but despite all my efforts, I could not shake the feeling that he would return. I began to notice strange things, the feeling that someone was in my house, small objects disappearing and then appearing in other places. One morning I found a note on my desk. "You think you can hide?" was written in illegible handwriting. It struck me to the core. He broke into my house. He knew where I lived and wasn't afraid to leave his mark. I immediately called Jessica. She arrived and inspected the house, but did not find any signs of a break-in. "This is very serious, Sarah. We have to find a way to stop him," she said, uneasiness in her voice. The next day, I received a message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry you're going through such a nightmare. I know who he is, but I can't tell you over the phone. Meet me at the cafe on the corner of Main Street at 7 p.m. I showed this message to Jessica, and we decided that I would go to the meeting, but she would be nearby, ready to step in if anything went wrong. At 7 p.m., I came to the cafe. It was almost empty. I sat down at the table by the window and waited. A few minutes later, a middle-aged man in a hat and dark glasses approached me. "Sarah?" he asked, and I nodded. He sat down across from me and quickly looked around as if he was afraid someone was watching him. "I can't say my name, but I know you're in danger. That man who's chasing you is called Mark. He's dangerous and has connections in the criminal world. You have to be careful." I felt a cold sweat on my skin. What does he want from me? Why is he chasing me? "I don't know for sure, but I know he won't stop until he gets his way. Be careful and don't trust anyone," the man said, and quickly left. I returned home in a state of shock. After telling Jessica everything, we decided to be even more careful. Now we had information about his name and connections. This gave us an advantage. Jessica contacted colleagues to verify information about Mark and his possible criminal connections. It turned out that Mark was on the list of suspects in several criminal cases, but was never arrested. We have developed a new plan. Jessica provided me with a tracker and a panic button so I could quickly call for help in case of danger. She also arranged for covert surveillance of my home. A few days later, I noticed that I was being followed again. This time I was ready. I carried a panic button and a tracker that Jessica had given me. I decided that I would not be a victim anymore. In the evening, when I was returning home, I saw him again. Mark was standing in the same place where I saw him for the first time. I made a decision. I need to act. "Mark!" I shouted, and he shuddered. "What do you want from me?" He smiled, but this time his smile was filled with anger. "You think you can hide from me? You still don't know who you contacted," he said, slowly approaching me. I pressed the panic button in my hand. Jessica must have been nearby, but Mark kept coming. "You don't understand what I can do," he continued, his voice becoming even more menacing. "But you'll find out very soon." Just as Mark almost reached me, I heard the sound of sirens. Police cars drove closer, and Jessica ran out of the car. "Stand! Police!" she shouted, and Mark stopped. He looked around as if looking for ways to escape, but this time he had no chance. The police quickly grabbed him and handcuffed him. I felt that I could finally breathe freely. Jessica came to me and hugged me. "It's okay, Sarah. You're safe now," she said, and I knew the words were true. After Mark's arrest, I was finally able to calm down a little, but the fear didn't completely leave me. I knew that this was only the beginning, and that the investigation of his case could reveal many unexpected facts. Jessica helped me find temporary housing where I could feel safer while the investigation continued. My friends and family supported me in trying to regain my sense of safety and normalcy. Jessica and her colleagues continued to investigate Mark's case. They found that he was involved in several cases of harassment and assault, but each time he managed to avoid justice due to lack of evidence or influential acquaintances. This time it was different. They had enough evidence to charge him with stalking and attempted violence. But what scared me the most was what they discovered. Mark had a list of potential victims, and my name was on that list. Even though Mark was in prison, I still felt fear. Every day it seemed that he could appear in my life again. I started going to a psychologist to deal with this fear and restore my mental health. Once during a session, the psychologist asked me, "Sarah, what are you most afraid of?" "I'm afraid he'll find a way to break free and come back to me," I replied, feeling the anxiety wash over me again. "We will work to make you feel protected and strong. You've already taken a big step forward by asking for help," she said, and I began to believe that I could overcome this fear. Several months have passed. Mark was sentenced to a long prison term. I gradually began to return to normal life. Jessica and I became even closer friends, and she helped me regain my faith in people. One day, we decided to meet at the same cafe where I got my first warning about Mark. It was a kind of symbol of victory over fear. "You know, Sarah, you're very strong. I'm proud of you," Jessica said as we sat at the same table. Thank you, Jess. I don't know how I would have coped without you, I replied, feeling like I could finally live without fear. One evening on my way home, I found a letter in my mailbox. It had no return address and the handwriting looked familiar. Opening the envelope, I saw a photograph of myself taken from a distance. On the back was written, "I'll be back." My heart beat faster. I immediately called Jessica and told her about the letter. It could be someone else, but we can't take any chances. I'll be right back, she said, and I felt the fear return. Jessica arrived quickly. We looked at the letter and the photo. She took them to analyze, hoping to find at least some clue. Well, check the fingerprints and find out where it was sent from. You should be careful not to leave the house unaccompanied, she said, and I agreed. Those few days seemed like an eternity. I felt trapped again, but now I had the support and confidence that Jessica and her colleagues would do everything possible to find the truth. Jessica brought a team of security professionals to my home to double-check all systems and install additional security measures. I felt a little calmer, knowing that my house had become a real fortress. But we have to be ready for anything, Sarah. You know Mark had accomplices. We can't rule out the possibility that one of them is continuing his case, Jessica warned me. Waiting for the results of the analysis was unbearable. I tried to occupy myself with work, hobbies, but every sound, every letter in the mailbox caused me to have a panic attack. Jessica called me one evening. Sarah, we have some results. The letter was indeed sent from somewhere nearby. We found fingerprints, but they don't belong to Mark. It's someone else. It didn't reassure me much, but at least we knew it wasn't Mark. Jessica promised to continue the investigation and find the culprit. One morning, when I was leaving the house, a woman approached me. She looked tired and scared. Sarah? She asked. I need to talk to you. It's about Mark. My heart beat faster. Who you are? My name is Linda. I was his victim years ago. I know what you've been through and I want to help, she said. Linda told me her story. She was pursued by Mark for several years but managed to escape and hide. Now, after learning about his arrest, she decided to help other victims. I know what it's like to live in fear, but together we can stop him and his accomplices, Linda said. We decided to join forces. Linda had a lot of information about Mark's past that could help Jessica in her investigation. Linda and I have been working with Jessica and her team for several days now. I felt that there was new hope in our fight against Mark and his accomplices, but the fear still did not leave me. One evening, when I was alone at home, the phone rang. I picked up the phone and immediately heard heavy breathing on the other end of the line. "You think you can hide from me?" sounded the familiar cold voice of Mark. "It's not the end yet." I trembled with terror, but quickly gathered my thoughts. "You don't scare me anymore. I'm not alone. We'll find you and stop you." "Let's see," he answered, and hung up. I couldn't sleep after that call. Every sound in the house sounded threatening. Suddenly, I heard something rustling near the door. My heart beat faster. I got out of bed and went to the door, holding a kitchen knife in my hands. "Who is there?" I asked, trying to suppress the fear in my voice. There was only silence in response. I pressed the panic button that Jessica had left for me just in case. The police arrived quickly. They checked the house but found nothing suspicious. Jessica stayed with me for the night so I could at least get some rest. The next morning, we discussed the situation with Jessica and Linda. We knew that Mark and his accomplices were still on the loose and that they would not stop. "Sarah, we have to find them first. We can't let them keep you at bay," Jessica said. "We have a plan, but it will be dangerous." I knew I couldn't live in constant fear. I agreed to the plan, even though it was risky. Jessica decided to set a trap. She installed additional cameras around my house and organized covert surveillance. Linda helped gather information about Mark's possible accomplices. We learned that Mark had one particularly dangerous accomplice, John. He was known for his brutal treatment of his victims and was extremely cautious. One evening, Jessica received information that John might appear in our area. She decided to act immediately. "Sarah, you should stay home. We have everything under control," she said. I stayed at home, but fear did not give me peace. Jessica and her team set traps around my house and began to wait. The night passed slowly, but around midnight we saw movement on the cameras. Jessica and her team quickly approached the place where John appeared. They saw him approach my house, but this time he wasn't alone. Two other men followed him. "Stand! Police!" Jessica shouted, and the team jumped out of cover. A struggle ensued. John and his accomplices tried to escape, but this time they had no chance. I watched everything through the cameras, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Jessica and her team finally stopped them. The police handcuffed them and took them to the station. After the arrest of John and his accomplices, I was finally able to breathe a little sigh of relief. Jessica assured me that I was safe now, but I still felt scared. "Sarah, you were extremely brave. Now you can sleep peacefully," Jessica said, hugging me. "Thank you, Jess." "I don't know how I would have coped without you," I replied, tears welling up in my eyes. Several months have passed. I returned to a normal life, although fear still sometimes reminded me of myself. I continued to see a psychologist and work on my recovery. Jessica became my close friend. We often met and shared news. I also stayed in touch with Linda, and we supported each other. One day, when I was walking in the park, a strange man approached me. He looked excited. "Sarah?" he asked, and I nodded. "I am Tom. I have something important to tell you about Mark," he said, and I felt my heart begin to beat faster. Tom told me he was a former friend of Mark's. He found out about his arrest and decided to warn me about a new threat. Mark was not alone. He has another accomplice, Simon. "He is even more dangerous, and now he can start hunting you," said Tom. I felt fear again, but now I knew that I would not be alone in this struggle. I immediately called Jessica and told her everything. Jessica assembled a team and began a new investigation. We knew that Simon would be even more cautious and dangerous. "We have to be ready for anything, Sarah, but we will find him and stop him," Jessica said, and I felt a new wave of determination. The investigation led us to an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. This was a place where Simon had often appeared before. We decided to set up surveillance and wait. One evening, we saw Simon drive up to the warehouse. He looked alert and kept looking around. We knew this was our chance. Jessica and her team came up with a plan to capture Simon. They waited for him to go inside and then surrounded the warehouse. "Simon, come out with your hands up! The police!" Jessica shouted over the loudspeaker. There was no answer. We waited in suspense. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Simon started shooting as he tried to escape. A firefight ensued, and I felt fear come over me again. During the firefight, I prayed that Jessica and her team would be safe. They risked their lives to protect me. Finally, after a few minutes, everything quieted down. Jessica informed me that Simon was injured and detained. I breathed a sigh of relief, but I knew this fight wasn't over yet. Simon was taken to the station. He was wounded, but alive. Jessica began interrogating him, trying to learn more about his plans and possible accomplices. "We're going to find everyone involved, Sarah. You won't have to live in fear anymore," she said. I felt that finally justice would be done. But there was still a lot of work ahead. After Simon's arrest, I began to feel that life was returning to normal. I continued to work with the psychologist and keep in touch with Jessica and Linda. My friends and family helped me regain faith in myself and my future. I knew I could overcome anything if I was surrounded by support. One evening, I decided to meet Linda at the cafe, where we first talked about Mark. We sat down at the table and started talking when suddenly I saw a familiar face. It was Tom. He came up to us and looked very excited. "Sarah, Linda, I have news. It's urgent," he said, and I felt my heart start beating faster again. Tom told us that he had learned of a new threat. Simon had another accomplice, Alex. He was even more dangerous and had access to weapons and resources. "We must act immediately. He can attack at any moment," said Tom. I felt the fear again, but now I knew we could stop it. I immediately called Jessica and told her everything. Jessica quickly assembled a team and began searching for Alex. We knew it would be the most dangerous operation, but we were ready for anything. We decided to set up an ambush near the place where Alex often appeared. It was an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. Jessica set up surveillance and waited. The night was cold and dark. We waited for several hours until we saw Alex pull up to the house. He looked cautious and kept looking around. "Now!" Jessica whispered, and the team rushed to the house. Alex tried to escape, but Jessica and her colleagues were faster. They surrounded him and detained him. I watched everything from a safe distance, feeling the tension finally begin to subside. After Alex's arrest, I felt a huge sense of relief. Finally, all those involved in the harassment and attacks were arrested. I knew that now I could live without fear. "You did it, Sarah. You were incredibly brave," Jessica said as she hugged me. "Thank you, Jess. I don't know how I would have coped without you and the whole team," I replied, feeling tears of joy roll down my cheeks. Several months have passed since Alex's arrest. I started a new life, full of hope and faith in the future. I continued to work with the psychologist and keep in touch with Jessica and Linda. My friends and family helped me regain faith in myself and my future. I knew I could overcome anything if I was surrounded by support. One day, when I was walking in the park, a strange man approached me. He looked excited. "Sarah?" he asked, and I nodded. "I'm Michael. I've worked with Mark and Simon. I know what you've been through and I want to help," he said, and I felt my heart start to beat faster. Michael told me that he had been an accomplice to Mark and Simon, but now he wanted to help expose their plans. Mark and Simon did not act alone. They had another accomplice, Jason. "He's even more dangerous and now he can start hunting you," said Michael. I felt fear again, but now I knew that I would not be alone in this struggle. I immediately called Jessica and told her everything. Jessica assembled a team and began a new investigation. We knew that Jason would be even more cautious and dangerous. "We have to be ready for anything, Sarah. But we will find him and stop him," Jessica said, and I felt a new wave of determination. The investigation led us to an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. This was a place where Jason had often appeared before. We decided to set up surveillance and wait. One evening, we saw Jason drive up to the warehouse. He looked alert and kept looking around. We knew this was our chance. Jessica and her team came up with a plan to capture Jason. They waited for him to go inside and then surrounded the warehouse. "Jason, get out with your hands up! The police!" Jessica shouted over the loudspeaker. There was no answer. We waited in suspense. Suddenly, a shot rang out. Jason started shooting as he tried to escape. A firefight ensued, and I felt fear come over me again. During the firefight, I prayed that Jessica and her team would be safe. They risked their lives to protect me. Finally, after a few minutes, everything quieted down. Jessica informed me that Jason was injured and detained. I breathed a sigh of relief, but I knew this fight wasn't over yet. Jason was taken to the station. He was wounded, but alive. Jessica began interrogating him, trying to learn more about his plans and possible accomplices. "We're going to find everyone involved, Sarah. You won't have to live in fear anymore," she said. I felt that finally justice would be done, but there was still a lot of work ahead. After Jason's arrest, I began to feel that life was returning to normal. I continued to work with the psychologist and keep in touch with Jessica and Linda. My friends and family helped me regain faith in myself and my future. I knew I could overcome anything if I was surrounded by support. A few months passed, and I finally felt that my life was returning to normal, but the memories of those terrible days still haunted me. I continued to see a psychologist and work on my recovery. One evening, I met with Jessica to discuss the latest developments. She told me that all the arrested criminals are now in custody and will receive the punishment they deserve. During one of our meetings in a cafe, a stranger approached us. He looked agitated and clearly wanted to say something. "Sarah, Jessica, I know what you've been through. My name is Robert, and I have some information that may be helpful to you," he said, and we both listened intently. Robert told us he knew of another threat. He found out that Jason had another accomplice, Max, accomplice, Max, accomplice, Max, accomplice.